I am excited to have TJ Adeshola here. He's the head of USA Sports Partnerships at a small company called Twitter. And TJ, it's great to have you on the Playbook. But, I'm a traditional sports person. I ran the most notable sports agency in the world, Leigh Steinberg Sports Entertainment. And if somebody would have told me who the players in sports would be, and compared to who they actually are here coming into 2022, Twitter would not have been at the top of my list, but you guys are leading the way and would love to talk about first Twitter's role in sports for those who have been hiding under a rock and may not know it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm super excited. I think that's a compliment, because to your point, I think about when I was in college and when I was getting my MBA. This job didn't exist. I didn't even think that this was a path. So to play a role within this crazy ass industry that is the sports industry, a really important role, man. It's humbling and it's exciting to me.
It's interesting because these roles that exist today, some of the best roles that exist today in sports were not even in existence. And, when we used to utilize quarterback talent, we would talk about the talent of a Ryan Leaf or a Jeff George. That just told us the basement of what they would be, right? So a Ryan Leaf, but it's really your desire that determines your potential. And I find, especially younger people who want to work in sports, that their skill and knowledge is their basement. And so they need to work on those skills and knowledge, but yet their desire is still their potential, their open-minded, open-hearted, open-handedness, their ability to adapt and to move within the context of the sports world, which is an enormous industry. For you, what were the skills and the knowledge, the basement stuff that you did in order to effectuate so many different opportunities, and including this opportunity in your career to have such a significant role?
Yeah, so I would say three key things for me, and it's funny, like very similar to what you mentioned. You speak to people who are evaluating quarterbacks about, or even students. One is be a student of the game. Like if this is what you want to do, you've identified this to be your path, you got to be a student of the game. Be a nerd. Understand the ins and outs, the X's and the O's. Who are the players? Who aren't the players? Where are the opportunities that exist? What types of solutions make sense for the challenges that exist within that industry? Be a student of the game, and that was something I took very seriously. And then two, like once you start to take in that knowledge, once you start to study your ass off and to truly be a student of the game and a subject matter expert, create a game plan, right? Because you've got all this knowledge now. Like, how do I actually apply this knowledge in a way that allows me to develop tactics to get to where I want to be? And then three, you got to shoot your shot. Like, what's the point of having the knowledge, having a game plan if you're not planning to execute upon that? So shooting your shot is really important. If you bump into Dave Meltzer on an elevator, say something, right? Like shoot your shot, because that interaction might be the interaction that changes the trajectory of your life. So I typically refer to those three pillars as really important for people who are looking to develop a career or to pivot into a different industry or that type of thing.
Yeah, you did a great job of explaining, being more interested than interesting, that being prepared for opportunity allows you to have more options and more opportunities. And part of what you do is some pretty big collaborations, and you have to be more interested than interesting to select the right partnerships and collaborations, especially in dealing with very large sports entities, organization, teams, leagues, etc. For you, some of the recent partnership renewals and other collaborations you have, which are the significant ones that excite you with your vast knowledge of where the future is going to hold content in sports?
It's a really good question. A few, you asking me to pick my favorite child. That's hard to do, David. That's hard to do. But what I would say is most recently, we've struck partnerships with the NBA, with the NFL, and NBC Sports around the previous Summer Olympics and the upcoming Winter Olympics. So those three have been anchors for us. when we think about innovation and disruption, the NBA has really leaned in to new ways to democratize the game and to get their game to as many people as possible. The NFL is a really, really powerful organization that understands the value of its IP in a way that I think many properties envy. We've leaned in really heavily with them, and they've done incredible work on our platform. And NBC Sports is the rights holder around all things Olympics in the U.S. We've done some really, really cool things with them. So I would identify those few, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the WNBA. We've partnered with Kathy over there, who's the commish. Her team is credible. They have a bias to disruption. They have a bias to newness. They want to do shit that gets people talking, that gets people excited. And those are the partnerships that excite me, when you're beyond the status quo and you're looking to do something that excites fans, that excites existing fans and new fans. That's when we get to do cool stuff. That's when you do stuff that breaks through, that hits the group chat, that hits the group text. Those are the types of partnerships that get us pretty excited. I mean, recently, last year, in partnering with the NFL, they said, we've been doing the Super Bowl a very similar way over the past few decades. How can Twitter help us disrupt that? And we put our heads together, and somebody was like, when the champions announced, confetti comes down, right? Why don't we put individual celebratory tweets on those pieces of confetti? And that's exactly what happened. Patrick Mahomes hoists up the trophy, the confetti is raining down on them, and on each of these individual pieces of confetti were tweets from him saying that when I win the Super Bowl, I'll go to Disney World, and those types of things. They turned tweeted into existing moments. And that was cool for us. And a lot of people were talking about it. So those are the ideas that get us excited, in addition to helping our sports partners generate revenue on Twitter. We have a really, really solid and turnkey monetization business. And yeah, man, like we coupled the cool stuff with the revenue stuff, and we've been able to develop a pretty cool business over the years.
Yeah, and it's not easy to have that great reconciliation of great ideas that are monetized in sports and content of sports. So it's a real gift that you've done it. In fact, you mentioned so many different tentpole moments listed out, but I still want to kind of double back on the Super Bowl, because I'm sure this year you have an even bigger and better plan in a new stadium in SoFi in Los Angeles, a great stage. I think the Super Bowl commercials were record price and sold out in 20 minutes. So there's going to be an incredible distinguishment in content that with the popularity of the Super Bowl, with what's been going on the last 2 years, there's going to be a lot of noise. How's Twitter planning on breaking through that noise and once again leading the way in the conversation about the biggest game in sports?
I'll tell you, Dave, I feel like I need to take a nap thinking about it, because in the span of 14 days, we've got the Super Bowl and NBA All-Star, right? One is in LA, one will be in Cleveland. And we have a role to play in each of those events, a really important role to play in each of those events. Not to mention, the bar is putting tweets on Super Bowl confetti, which had never been done before. So we're tasked with exceeding an idea that was super cool and innovative, but we very much welcome that challenge. So we're having syncs with the NFL and our cross-functional stakeholders on damn near a daily basis to make sure that we nail it, that we have an action plan in place and the tactics make sense. Our old boss is the CEO of SoFi, Anthony Noto, and I shot him a text yesterday. I'm like, hey man, I might need to call in a favor pretty soon. Don't ghost me. Don't leave me on red. So we're starting to lay the foundation to ensure that we're set up to develop something really mind-boggling, really awesome for not only the Super Bowl, but the NBA All-Star game, and a few weeks prior, college football national championship too. So Q1 is going to be a fun one. It's going to be a sprint, but we are laser focused on delivering really cool and disruptive ideas and concepts that get sports fans, sports leagues, players, athletes, teams, coaches excited.
Sometimes we take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. And one of the areas of disruption, which I like because it's a core competency of mine. It's a superpower of mine, which is audio. And it's not just because I have a face for a radio, but audio itself, audio itself is very disruptive. There's, you know, from Cuban to Clubhouse to all types of entrepreneurs are hitting me up because of the audio experience that I have and situational knowledge in audio of, you know, understanding how to utilize audio as, you know, the up and coming popular way to converse, to discuss, you know, which is truly a superpower of Twitter. So I know you guys created Twitter Spaces in sports, and there's a component to have a live audio conversation. You know, how did that come about, and how important do you think audio will be in the future?
Yeah, one thing about sports fans, as you know, sports fans don't mind talking a little talk. They particularly don't mind talking a little shit, right?
Yeah.
So Spaces has been this format, this feature that sports fans have become obsessive about. The beauty of sports, one of the beautiful things about sports is there's so much community, like inherently built within sports fandom. So if you're a Knicks fan, it feels really cool to hop into an app that you've been using to converse about with other Knicks fans and actually have like live discussions around the teams, the leagues that you love. A trend that we're seeing a lot of is halftime. People are hopping into Spaces at halftime to recap the first half and to speak about what they'd like to see occur in the second half. So the feature is really, really ripe for the usage that we're seeing, which is up and to the right. You know, a couple years ago, we launched a feature called Voice Tweets, which allows you to pull up a tweet and actually record something and tweet it out. And we saw really, really, really fascinating uses from people on our platform, which then evolved into what you've noted as Spaces now. Every major league is tested with Spaces or is currently doing it. NFL does one a week, NBA does one a week, Major League Baseball, MLS, WNBA has been incredible on it. So we're seeing adoption across every major league and rights holder in sports, which is cool. And it allows you to be human. It allows you to reduce some of the friction that exists between fans, leagues, teams, and athletes. So we're excited. We've seen my man Kevin Durant hop in, Aaron Rodgers has been in Spaces, Jarvis Landry, the whole nine. We've seen a considerable amount of adoption, and we expect that to continue. These sports leagues have been on Twitter for years, for a decade plus. And they've worked really hard to develop a following. They've worked really hard to develop people who have an affinity for that particular property. So now to be able to engage them in a very different way than you have in the past by leveraging live audio is really special. It's really special. Last year during the NBA finals, we reinvented the press conference, and the NBA had Chris Paul actually taking questions via Spaces as if it were a new age press conference. Those are the types of use cases that we get really excited about. With ESPN this past week, we have a feature called Ticketed Spaces, which allow publishers or users to sell a ticket to a space. And for the Jimmy V, for Cancer Research Foundation, they were like, well, why don't we sell tickets to enter the space for cancer research? And that's exactly what they did. So we're seeing really cool use cases. We're continuing to build upon the feature, and we're excited about what the future looks like. And we got to get you in one of those things. So you tell me when you're ready. We'll get you locked in.
We'll get it, man, for sure. We'll get Jake on that. And just real quickly, though, you know, what I love about you at such a young age, and I tried to do this at a young age, was to utilize not only the success that I had, but the relationship capital and impact for good. And, you know, whether it was I was working with the Clemente family, the Robinson family, you know, of course, you know, Warren Moon, inclusion, equity, diversity has been at the forefront of my career to have an impact, to use what I feel is the most equitable experience that children have, which is sports, where everyone is an equal, that we have a common bond. And, you know, no matter what socioeconomic, religious, cultural background you have, you know, from the time the Olympics were created, it was about equity, inclusion, and diversity in the name of sport. And you chair the Blackbirds. You are a 40 under 40 kid. you have the MIS as well, which you're a member of, the Minorities of Sports. How important is it to you to use your access and influence? I hate to call you an influencer because I completely think you're an ambassador, but to use your ambassadorship to affect change, something more significant than just winning ball games and talking shit.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you for making me sound young. I appreciate that. I feel like I'm this podcast got me on my Benjamin Button. I feel younger by each minute that passes. So thank you for that.
When you're as old as me, Justin, you're young, buddy. Don't worry.
One of the things that I routinely say, I should probably trademark it, is beyond the box score. It's bigger than the box score. I think wins and losses are important, but I think it's also important to understand how you impact the game, right? And impact sometimes doesn't necessarily get reflected in how many points you scored or how many rebounds you had or how many touchdowns you scored. And for me, impact looks like providing a bridge, being a conduit to people who look like me, people who may not have had the chances that others have had to work in this amazing space that we call sports, man. Diversity and inclusion is important to me. The sports that we consume and love and talk about on a day-to-day basis are not a monolith. They're not homogenous. You see all types of cultures and creeds and colors and shapes and sizes represented on the pitch, the field, on the court. And our industry has lagged in being a reflection of that. So as far as I'm concerned, I have a job to be the best TJ that I can be for Twitter and for Jack Dorsey. Jack is of last week. But I also have a responsibility to make sure that I'm creating a path for others who may not have had access to the space. So I realize that I have privilege in my role, and that privilege needs to be leveraged to provide opportunities to folks who, again, look like me. If it wasn't for some of my mentees and some of my big bros and OGs in the industry, if it wasn't for me having the opportunity to read about your story and hear about some of the impactful work that you committed yourself to for the entirety of your career, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. I wouldn't be here. And I recognize that. So I take it very importantly. I know if I don't, my mama would smack me in the face, right? So I have to be held accountable, and that's something that I ask of the entire sports industry, man. It's table stakes, and it's important.
Wow, I have great confidence in our future with leaders like you. I have one last super critical question. I, don't like to ask hard questions, but this is the hard one. So Jake, my right hand went to Michigan. I lost. I bet him a month's salary that Ohio State would beat him. He gave me the money line even, and so I beat him. For so many years in a row. Tell me who's going to win this Georgia-Michigan matchup when it happens. Let me know who's better, Georgia or Michigan, so I could get a double or nothing bet going.
So here's what I'm gonna say. Vegas has already told us that Georgia is a touchdown favorite, and Vegas tends to know a little something when it comes to matchups. I think we match up really well against it. I have nothing but love for Ann Arbor and my homies at the University of Michigan. I feel like the University of Michigan and that network dominates the sports industry. One of my favorite things to do when I'm in Ann Arbor is eat Zingerman's. And when it comes to that football field, University of Georgia football team is going to do a lot of eating. We're going to get a W. We won't get a W.
All right, man. I'll make my money. Thank you so much.